Lesson 1-4, Solving Absolute Value Equations. Objective: evaluate expressions involving absolute values. Solve absolute value equations. Let's take a look at what an absolute value means. It is the number that's the distance between 0 and that number. If I want the absolute value of -4, I want the distance between -4 and 0. The distance between -4 and 0 is 4. If I want the absolute value of 4, then what I'm asking for is the distance between 4 and 0. And the distance between 4 and 0 is 4. So that's what absolute value means. Let's take a look at evaluating an expression. So we have this expression, and we're going to put -7.5 into this expression. Now when we do this, what we want to do is we want to treat absolute value like a parentheses. We want to evaluate the expression inside. Notice there's multiplication and addition. We want to do the multiplication first because of PEMDAS. And then after that we simplify here. Now this expression right here, remember we're talking about what is the distance between -10 and 0. And that answer is 10. So this is 8.4 minus 10. And so here's our answer. Let's take a look at these expressions here. I've already substituted the numbers in for x. So again, I treat the absolute value like a parentheses, and I'm going to do multiplication first. That's -8 plus 3, absolute value, minus 3.5. Now this answer inside is -5. The absolute value of -5 is +5. And then our answer will be 1 and 1/2. Over here, I'm taking this expression, I'm going to substitute this in for y. So I'm going to write 1 and 1/2, and I want to treat the absolute value just like a parentheses. I'm going to do multiplication first, and that'll be -4/3 plus 1. And then I'll have 1 and 1/2 minus, now this is the same thing as -1 and 1/3. -1 and 1/3 plus 1 will make a -1/3 here. And then I'm going to write 1 and 1/2 minus, and then remember this is the absolute value of that, which will be 1/3. So this is going to be 3/2 take away 1/3. Now remember our fractions, we need to get common denominators. So if I multiply top and bottom by 3, that'll be 9/6. Multiply top and bottom by 2, that'll be 2/6. And so my answer will be 7/6. Pause to do the problem, and here's the answer. Let's talk about solving an absolute value equation. So we have looked at, like say, if x is equal to 5, then we know that x can, the distance, if that distance is 5, x could have been the number 5, or it could have been -5. So these are the two numbers that x can be when I have a distance of 5. What we're doing right here is, instead of being the distance from 0, we're going to have the distance from this central value, c. So c is our central value, and this will be the distance from that central value. So for example, this problem right here, the absolute value of x minus 100. 100 happens to be the central value, and we know our distance from that central value will be 20 to one side, 20 to the other side. So the two answers will be 80 and 120. Now how do we do that in algebra? Well, in algebra, what we can do so that we don't have to draw this picture, we can just take this expression right here, and we know that this expression, x minus 100, has the possibility of being +20. And then I can solve by adding 100 on both sides, and so one of my answers is 120, which is what I get over here on the graph. Now the other possibility is that the distance, so this number in here, that distance could have come from -20, and if I add 100 on both sides, then that answer would be 80. So these are our two answers, doing it algebraically instead of graphically. All right, let's take a look at solving this equation. Now you notice I've already circled this, and I know that this quantity, x plus 12, can be +9, or x plus 12 can be -9, because these are the two numbers that will have a distance from the central value of 9. So x will be equal to -3 or x will be equal to negative 21. I'm going to do it again here. So this is our value here whose distance is 8. So y plus 5 can have this distance of positive 8, or it can go in the other direction. X plus 5 is equal to negative 8. So y is equal to 3, or y is equal to negative 13. And you can check your answer by putting it back into the original to see if it works. Okay, pause and do the problem. And here's the answer. Let's take a look at an equation that will give us no answer. Notice that I am going to solve, I'm going to try to get my absolute value by itself, and when I do this, something very interesting happens. I get this absolute value is equal to negative 7. And that can't happen. This sentence is never true, because an absolute value is a distance from the central value, and distances are always positive. So when you see an absolute value equal to a negative number, you say that the solution set is the null set. In other words, there exists no answer. Okay, so let's try to do this problem. I'm going to try to get my absolute value by itself, and the way to do that is to divide both sides by negative 2. When I do that, I am going to get the absolute value of 3a is equal to negative 3, and this does not make sense. An absolute value is a positive number, it's a distance, and so what we say is there's no solution. If I subtract 8 on both sides on this particular problem, I'll get the absolute value of 4b plus 1 is equal to negative 8. And again, this doesn't make sense. An absolute value, which represents a distance, is not negative. So we say it's the empty set. There is no answer here. Pause and see what you can do. And here's the answer.